Bonk.
And hello, welcome to Okanagan Legends and Hauntings, your podcast for all things mysterious and unexplainable in the region. And today, Georgia and I have swapped spots. And that is because I get to learn from Georgia today, and she is in the presenter seat.
I learned some stuff.
Did you know?
I've learned some things.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I'm excited to tell you about it.
I'm excited to learn.
Today, we may rock the boat with some alleged hauntings upon the S.S Sicamous. I have a packet, and I'm ready to read. To intro upon the S.S Sicamous, for me personally, I chose this topic because I love transportation. I like trains, I like boats, I like planes, I like cars. Really anything that is old and got us from one point to another, because I think it's super interesting how now we just have like very high-speed metal boxes that we hurl ourselves through, like time. I think it's so interesting how like back in the day, like our cars literally went like at 20 miles or kilometers per hour. And it's like, we still got from point A to point B. Like, we still got there. And even further back in the day, it was like horse carriages, buggies, sometimes just, cowboys on horseback. And that's how we got around.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, we don't really have an art to traveling. And I think that is, it makes sense because we have science advancements and all that, but I think there's a little charm in like an adventure taking a long time to get from point A to point B, and I think that's why a lot of people right now are using trains and stuff to get around in cruises, because there's an art to the wait and an art to traveling and having fun while traveling. Like, we don't have to like get there now.
Yeah, I think for myself, forms of transportation, historical and current, are a bit of a blind spot for me.
Yeah.
So I think I have a lot to learn here, but I totally agree with what you say about how we've kind of lost the art of travel.
Yeah.
Like when you look back at old photos where people were dressed to the nines to
Yeah.
go on a flight or to take a train ride. And now if I am not in sweatpants at the airport, I'm in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Like, I need to be as comfortable as possible.
Feel that.
And I think people from back in the day would look at me and judge me so bad.
Nah.
Well, I
yeah,
think they would. It's a different time now.
Yeah, we like to be comfortable.
Yes, I do like to be comfortable. Traveling is not a fashion statement for me, but I understand it was at one point.
Yeah, like you said, like people would literally dress up in their best garb to go for a little trip.
And so now we're going to talk about a form of travel not unique to the Okanagan, but
it's pretty unique.
Yeah.
There were a couple other boats like this around the world, but like the Okanagan had a couple of boats that were just people movers and like help people to get to where they needed to go. So I'm very excited to dive into this. In my intro, I have all aboard. Choo. Oh wait. Honk.
Anchors away.
Hoist that anchor. No. So all aboard. Today we're going to be steering into the past and setting sail on the Okanagan Lake, aboard one of British Columbia's most iconic vessels, the S.S Sicamous. It was also known as the Queen of the Okanagan Lake. This grand stern whaler has a full story of luxury, innovation, and regional heritage. So before we do any of that, we're going to dive into our interview segment to gain some understanding of the historical ship and the events that occurred on it. Then we will swim through the rest of our episode.
All right.
Roll that clip.
Let's see that interview.
My name's Randy Manuel. I am now retired, but was once the director for the City of Penticton's Museum and Archives from 1986 until roughly 2005. During that time frame of my tenure, I was hired basically to look after the city's heritage artifacts. And in those days, we just had the Sicamous and not the other ships on site. One of the things that I wanted to be able to do was to be able to get the ship restored. And so starting in roughly 1988, I started to do headhunting to find people who had skills that would be required to be able to restore the vessel. So that was kind of the start of creating the historic ship site. And it underwent a couple of names over the years as the site gathered the S.S Sicamous, and then we acquired the stern saloon of the S.S Okanagan. And finally, about 2007, we acquired the CNR ship, tug number 6. And so we've been able to gather enough marine equipment and artifacts to be able to tell the story of shipping and steamboating on the inland waters of British Columbia. I guess the passion of the boat is kind of in my blood to a certain extent. I've always been fascinated by trains and ships. The vessel was initially put here in 1951, and I'm afraid I wasn't present to be able to watch it being brought in because I was being babysat by my grandmother that day. But my dad, in a D8 Cat, dug a trench in the sand to be able to pull the boat in. And his brother-in-law, my uncle Herb Leroy, was part of the Gyro Club who had arranged and organized to be able to acquire the ship and bring it down here. And he had the dubious distinction of breaking his ankle as he jumped off the bow onto the beach to be able to take a rope up to one of the trees on the beach to be able to tie the ship there, while Dad would then hook onto the back end of it and pull it into the trench. So I had a connection to it just from family alone. Then growing up in the neighborhood, we were what I would call professional brats. We would come on board the boat when we weren't supposed to. And in those days, one of the charms of being on the ship was to be able to climb on the paddle wheel itself and get inside the paddle wheel box or play tag on it until we annoyed the curator of the day who had a private museum on board on the engine deck. So there's always been this kind of fun attachment to the boat. When I became the museum curator, one of the things I wanted to do was to be able to preserve some of the vanishing history of the lower end of the valley. It's a city-owned vessel, and over the years after the museum had moved out of it and onto its present site up at Main Street, it had been leased out to several business operations like a wax museum, a restaurant, and of course the restaurateurs didn't take a look at the historic aspect of the ship. They tried to make it something that it wasn't. So there were basketball nets strung from port to starboard in here with plastic starfish and crabs and everything like that in it. They dismantled and took out the side staterooms just to make a big dining room from port to starboard. But in the process of doing that, then they destroyed a lot of the integrity of the ship and its internal strength. They also didn't like the curvature of the vessel, so they built a floor upon the existing beautiful parquet floor with 2x4s that would have been curved where it was attached to the floor, and then plywood put on top of that so you could have a flat floor for dancing, etc. So it just drives me bananas when people come and take a beautiful piece of history and try to modify it and change it to be able to make it attractive. When the original attraction was to be able to make it look like it did 100 years ago. Well, the Sicamous was the last of the CPR steamers to be built on the lake, and its main function was to be able to help settle the valley. By 1914, the railway was under construction into Penticton, but was not yet finished. So Penticton on the south end was essentially geographically cut off because of the mountains on either side. And so the only way in and out of the lower valley was by boat. And so it was important for the CPR boats to be able to bring settlers and all of their possessions into the various towns, villages, and landings up and down the lake. As well as once it got to Penticton, then it made the connection by stagecoach to the mining communities of Camp McKinney and Fairview down west of Oliver. And so everything that a person is going to need has to come by boat, from needle and thread to all of your furniture. And in return, the early farmers are taking out fruit, vegetables, other things. And by 1912, 10 and 12, both the tugs and the other stern wheelers, which were sometimes reduced to pushing freight barges, they were busy. So even as late as the 1920s and 30s, between the Canadian National Railway and the Canadian Pacific Railway, there could be as many as 4 to 6 boats a day coming into Penticton. They would be taking rail cars up to Vernon, and there the rail cars would go on the Shuswap and Okanagan Railway to Sicamous Junction, was where the CPR mainline was. And you would then go east or west, both freight and or passengers. So you can imagine today people complain about Okanagan Lake Floating Bridge and taking them 20 minutes to cross, or the Coquihalla Connector and there's a fire or an accident and they can't get to the coast in 5 or 6 hours. In those days, a quick trip could have taken a day and a half, and you didn't complain about it. You rode on the ship from here to Vernon, you got the train from Vernon to Sicamous, caught the CPR's Transcontinental to go to Vancouver, and about 14 to 24 hours, depending on the time of year and the equipment used, you'd eventually get to the coast. You definitely lost the art of the wait. In those days, people dressed up to travel. And it was an adventure because you can imagine you're riding on these beautiful vessels. If you lived south of here in Oliver or Osoyoos and you wanted to go to Calgary, then you took the stagecoach, or the earliest days, a motor coach, which might take 2 to 4 hours just to get from Osoyoos to Penticton. Then you would stay overnight on board the ship because the ship didn't travel at night. So you had 2 choices. You could stay overnight on board the ship, or you in the CPR hotel in Kolowik, which was just across the beach from the CPR wharf. Once you caught the train and you're off to Calgary, now you're still in CPR luxury, because if you could afford it, you would be taking one of the coaches that would have cabins on it or bunks on it. It might take you 5 days, say, to get from here to Montreal, where you would then catch a boat and get yourself back to the mother country, jolly old England, to be able to visit the relatives. And so 2 weeks to travel to the old country was not bad. Now you complain if you have to wait for 4 or 5 hours in the tarmac, and to get from here to England now is only 8 hours. Is the ship haunted? I've been on the vessel by myself, shutting it up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And if there was any ghosts on board, they certainly weren't interested in scaring the pants off me. Although there were certainly some creaks and moans and groans on board the vessel that could let my imagination run wild. And I certainly wasn't dawdling when I finally shut up the door, say at 2 o'clock in the morning after an event. I think it all depends too on how much you have drank at any particular event on board the ship. To the best of my knowledge, nobody ever died on the ship. Although on other ships on the lake, there were accidents in which people were killed. Because while it may have been romantic to be able to travel on board the vessel, being somebody who worked on it was dangerous, and people did lose their lives. Not on the Sicamous, but on number 6, when Captain James Kinney was killed December 11th, 1964, when the cable that was used to be able to discharge the cars off the barge snapped and hit him in the face and chest and killed him instantly. Is Mr. Kinney haunting one of our other ships, CN number 6? I don't know if I'd want to stay overnight on top of that. But I'm sure there are on the Naramata and number 6. Because in number 6 we had a cook who was cooking for the crew on board the Naramata, and when it pulled into the village of Naramata one day, it was going to be half an hour while the boxcars were being discharged. He decided he'd walk up the street to the Naramata General Store and get some extra groceries, and as he was stepping off the barge and onto the apron of the dock, he slipped and fell and died, hitting his head on the rocks down below. So that is one death that can be attributed to the Naramata. Number 6, of course, was Mr. Kinney, who was killed. And there is another ship that was on the lake that has been dismantled and is reassembled on the coast. And there was a man killed on that one during the launching in May of 1930, when the boat was sideways launched before the cabin was put on. It hits the water and tilts. And these Mr. McGill and another gentleman whose name escapes me were sitting on the fan deck or the back, because you needed to have somebody on board the vessel to be able to handle the ropes to now tie it up to the ways while the rest of the construction is completed. And the boat went in too fast and tilted too much, and he was washed overboard. And because he's wearing overalls and boots, he sank to the bottom of the lake, and his body wasn't found for about 4 or 5 hours later. So working on the ships was dangerous, but not comfortable enough for, I think, a ghost at least to come along and scare the pants off our guests on the Sicamous. Although, if you've got a proper person with a seance, they might be able to call somebody up who just doesn't want to talk to me.
Boats and oh, haha. Hello. Didn't see you there.
Okay.
Welcome back. So now that we've heard from Randy, what do you think about life back then and taking boats to get to where you need to go?
I think it was so interesting to hear Randy talk about the length of time it would take to get between places in the Okanagan.
Yeah.
Like, in my mind, I can get anywhere in an hour.
Yeah.
So to hear it would take, like half a day or overnight to travel to places that I consider to be really close by, like, just, it's so interesting to consider how different transportation was back in the day.
Totally. And I was talking to Randy aside from the interview, and he was like, "Oh, how long did it take for you to get here today?"
Mm-hmm.
We're central to Kelowna-ish area.
Mm-hmm.
And Penticton is about an hour and a half, 2 hours away, depending on traffic. So I told him that, and he was like, "Oh, well, if you're on the S.S Sicamous, it would have taken you like half a day." And I was like, "Oh," like it's a hard thing to comprehend. Of like, I get in my car, I drive for 2 hours, and I'm there. Not
less than 2 hours.
Not even 2 hours is literally like really bad traffic, hard to get over the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It probably took me an hour 15, hour 20, hour and a half. Like, really, like, honestly, not that much time.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, dress up, you'd have to wake up at like 6 in the morning to board the ship, or if you were lucky enough to get one of their staterooms, you would sleep overnight on the ship, Because they didn't sail at night. There's no, like, lights that they could use at that time. So what you would do is you'd get on the boat the night before, sleep on the boat, wake up, eat your breakfast. You've already taken off. You didn't have to wake up at the hotel, grab your bags, get on the boat at 6 a.m. and then sail off. You'd wake up, you'd already have sailed off. You're eating a beautiful breakfast in the dining room. You maybe have lunch.
That sounds so luxurious.
Yeah, and then you get to, like, Kelowna. You can get off at Kelowna or stay on the ship and go towards Vernon. And then from there you'd catch a train. And it's, like, so many more things that you'd have to think of to, like, even just get to Vancouver.
Yeah.
You know, like, Vancouver's, 3 hours away?
Yeah, 3-4 hours.
Like, back then it'd be, like, a day and a half on a boat. And then you'd probably be on the train for, like, 2 days. Depending on, what was going on.
Wow.
And, I think it's so interesting that, people would see that as a luxury. People saw that as a luxury to get around.
I mean, hey, that's one way to take a bit of a getaway.
Yeah.
Spend it on a train.
Spend it on
somewhere
train.
different.
And now we're like, it took me 3.5 hours to get to Vancouver, not 3 hours. And it's just like, hey, like, we can have some fun on a trip.
Yeah, take a little boat ride.
Yeah, take a little boat ride. Some of the best trips are when you just take your time.
Totally.
You get to see all of the things.
Agreed.
Let's get back to the S.S Sicamous. I'm going to read from my packet because there is a lot of information to digest because this was like a boat that was used for a very long time and for very many things. So the journey began in September of 1913 when the Canadian Pacific Railway commissioned a new vessel to serve the communities here in the Okanagan. So the hull, boiler, and engines were all fabricated in Port Arthur, which is now known as Thunder Bay, Ontario. And they actually traveled across Canada in 17 rail cars.
Sorry, so all of those pieces, the hull and the boiler, it took 17 rail cars to get them over here.
Yeah, so the hull, the boiler, and the engines from Ontario to the Okanagan, it took 17 rail cars to Okanagan Landing.
Holy moly.
So yeah, it even took like 150 shipyard workers to like assemble it and like weld it together.
Oh gosh.
So it was like a very in-depth thing to make. So
what a production.
So that was September 1913 when it was commissioned, and then, everything began its journey here. And then on May 19th, 1914, it was done and it was ready to go. So amidst cheers and tooting of whistles, Miss J. Corbett, don't know who that is, but her name was mentioned, christened the vessel.
Do you think it was like, where they take the bottle and they like smash it on the ship and then they go bye-bye as the ship like goes off into the sunset?
I don't know. What we do know is that on the day that it headed out, Randy's uncle jumped off of the boat and broke his ankle.
That's one way to start a
journey.
Yeah, a long journey.
Oh man! So the launch wasn't without any drama. The S.S Sicamous actually got stuck on its cradles.
What are cradles?
So it kind of got stuck on the bottom and wouldn't go into the water. So they actually had to get a tugboat to kind of like pull it out.
They had to get a boat for their boat.
They had to get a boat for the boat.
Okay.
To pull it out. So
well, I mean, who among us has not gotten stuck in the snow and needed a little bit of help?
Yeah.
So.
Or even the sand.
True.
Sometimes you just sink. Just sinks.
Yeah, sometimes you're stuck.
Sometimes things happen and you're stuck.
And that's life.
And it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
Ask for
That's
help.
the lesson of the S.S Sicamous.
Yeah, ask for help from your fellow tugboats. So the S.S Sicamous was a marvel of luxury and engineering. It stretched over 200 feet, and it housed 37 staterooms, which is the rooms that I talked about that you could stay in. saloons for both ladies and the gentlemen. I'll get into that. And a magnificent dining hall. The dining hall is absolutely gorgeous. Like, there's crown molding, there's stained glass, and to paint you a picture, low-key kind of felt like the Titanic.
Oh my.
It was like, wow.
Ooh la la.
Yeah, it was very pretty. And so back in the day, there was like saloons for gentlemen and for the ladies.
Right.
So basically, the men would go and they would like gamble and drink and smoke cigars.
Okay.
And then the ladies would have their own saloon. And it'd usually be like ladies and like children.
Okay.
Because the moms have to take care of the kids.
Yeah.
But it was just like a quieter area for like ladies to just like enjoy themselves and like have some tea, and that sort of thing. So the men could go be rambunctious and like
Right. Sounds appropriate for the era.
for the era.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a little bit more insight of like what it was like to travel back then.
Cool.
So inside, the passengers would enjoy like fully prepared meals. So because this is an era of, you know, sort of the men had their side, the women had their side, there's also sort of racism.
Yuck.
You know, like the Chinese cooks couldn't come above a certain deck, and they just kind of had to stay in the kitchen.
Lame.
Yeah, I think that is a thing that has happened in history of just like, hey, you can't come up to this deck. So that is unfortunate, but that's kind of what happened. And then, so because they couldn't come up to certain decks, they actually had like a dumbwaiter. It would go up, I think, 2 floors, if I'm remembering correctly, up the dumbwaiter, and then the waiters in the dining room would then grab and then give people their food. So, and then other things they would enjoy is like actually some of the staterooms, some of the upper scale staterooms had like baths inside. So what you could do for, I think it was like 50 cents, you could pay to have a hot bath while you were on board the
Nice.
S.S Sicamous. So that's pretty
Cool.
luxurious. It's so funny. I love the concept of like being in a tub on the water.
It feels so extra
You're-
and very like high class
Yeah.
luxury.
Because like you're in water and then you're in water.
Yeah. Have you ever been on like a houseboat with a hot tub?
Yes. Yeah, it's super weird. It's like this is just warm water. I could be in that water, but I've chosen to be in this water.
Look at that. Things never do change.
Chlorine.
We're still in tubs of water on top of water.
on top of water. Exactly. So during peak service, the Sicamous burned 15 to 17 tons of coal each day. And that was only to reach speeds of around 18 knots, which is about 34 kilometers an hour.
That feels like a lot of coal.
So 15 to 17 tons. When I got there, Randy showed me sort of the boiler room. And like the area is very small. Like I'm 5'2", I would fit in that area to shovel the coal in.
Wow.
Like it is a very cramped space. And so they would basically open like a hatch and then like they would shovel coal in, and then basically people would be down there like shoveling coal in to like
just constantly
keep the boiler going and keep the ship going.
And they just do that like throughout the whole ride. Wow.
Yeah, because it needs power, and then, you know, people are using water in the kitchen or, you know, in the bathrooms, and it needs to be hot, but it's powered by steam. So, yeah, like, it's a lot of coal. That's a lot of coal to go through.
Like, I just can't even imagine, like, the space to hold that amount of coal.
It's actually crazy. If you guys have a chance to go to the S.S Sicamous in Penticton, like, please go. The people there are super nice and super knowledgeable, and it's honestly just a marvel to see. And especially when I'm telling you about certain things, like, you kind of just have to see it for yourself, because you can't quite understand what I'm talking about when I say the space is very small.
Right, yeah.
To, like, shovel coal in. And like that was someone's job.
Mm-hmm.
Their job was to, hey, get the coal and put it in to the boiler.
It makes me think of those old-timey cartoons or shows on the train where there's just the guy like shoveling the coal.
Yeah, I'm like,
Same
did
thing
they
on-
whistle? Did
Yeah.
they sing a song?
Same thing on a boat.
Yeah, same thing on a boat. It's quite crazy. So it launched from Penticton each morning, typically at like 5:30, except for Sundays. They had Sundays off.
Mm-hmm.
And it would go to like 14 scheduled landings. And those went from Peachland and Kelowna up to Okanagan Landing. Smaller settlements could also flag down the S.S Sicamous with like flags or fires to be like, hello, I want to ride. Come pick me up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so people would just be like, there's a boat. Let's get on the boat. Hello.
Cool.
And then it would make a stop at a smaller settlement to pick people up because obviously if you're in a smaller settlement, it's hard to get from different spots, especially if you don't have like horses or a donkey or, you know, anything that could help you get to the bigger cities.
Right.
So flagging them down was just kind of a normal thing that people would do in order to hitch a ride. And we kind of do that now.
It's so interesting to think about the term flagging a taxi.
Yeah.
Because that must have derived from these types of situations where people were literally using a flag to signal to passing boats that they wanted a ride.
Literally. Over the years, the vessel's purpose was kind of reshaped. We kind of completed the Kettle Valley Railway, highways, you know, cars. Even the Great Depression kind of undercut a lot of the passenger numbers. So in response, the ship kind of did a couple of renovations. So 2/3 of the observational deck and the Texas deck were removed to reduce wind. So like the top two decks basically.
Right.
And that was so it would be lighter and they could cut their coal consumption because like 17 tons of coal is a lot of coal
Per day.
I
can't get over that. That is so much coal.
And it's a lot of work and it's also a lot of money. Like if you're not getting enough passengers or, you know, people are doing other modes of transportation like a train, it's a lot of money to keep up with. So they took the top two decks basically off. And then this made more room for cargo. So instead of passengers, it kind of became a bit more of like a cargo boat to help get food and like sewing items, clothes, even like automobile parts. It was used to then bring those things over to the Okanagan. So kind of a huge help to the building of civilization. And I think it's kind of brutal in a way. And I'll tell you why. I think it's a bit brutal in the sense of this boat that carried people for a very long time is now carrying parts of other better items to carry people. So, you know, this boat helped people build cars. And then that led to its demise.
Yeah, that's kind of sad when you think of it that way.
Yeah, so 1914 started, and then by the mid-1930s, the automobile and rail travel sort of dominated everything. So it actually made its final voyage in 1936, and then had a final ceremony journey in 1937.
Wow, so that was like just over 20 years.
Yeah.
I feel like that's way shorter than I would have expected.
It's way shorter. I just think at that time we were like really advancing things. Because we started seeing the pros of convenience rather than, you know, taking time to like make a trip happen. So yeah, so there's a lot of history here. Thankfully, the Sicamous avoided the fate of many of the other boats. She was permanently beached on the shore of Okanagan Lake in Penticton and entrusted to the S.S Sicamous Marine Heritage Society. The boat actually went through like a lot of different changes. As we heard in the interview, it became a restaurant, and they actually like did some structural damage to the boat because they were trying to just like level out some of the flooring so they could have like a dance floor and stuff. But then I think what Randy has done to repair the boat is like really incredible.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I feel like growing up, I had this sense that there was a boat with a restaurant on it in Penticton, but seems like for the best that maybe it's not operational as a restaurant anymore.
Yeah. So today she stands restored very beautifully, I might add. Big props to Randy and everybody who helped restore the S.S Sicamous. I'm a big sucker for like very historically accurate buildings, boats, trains. I think it's very cool to see how they looked back in the day.
Yeah, that's great.
And you are welcome to go tour the decks and explore the cabins. They have like a lot of things that were from the actual boat, like in displays there, so you can actually see like what people were eating off of, old pictures and stuff. So it is very, very cool.
I'll have to go check it out.
Yeah, highly recommend. As beautiful as it is, Randy said in his interview that he doesn't believe that the boat is haunted.
Then why, pray tell, are we talking about the S.S Sicamous on our podcast, Georgia?
The reason is, and Randy had talked to me about this, there are some happenings that have happened on other boats that are located like right next to the S.S Sicamous. So it could be speculated that the ghosts are able to come to the S.S Sicamous from the other boats and roam there. Speculated.
Right.
But that's my speculation.
Okay, you can speculate.
That's my hot tea. That's my speculation. I think that maybe that could be something that people are experiencing because the other boats do have some deaths on them.
Okay.
That have happened.
Were they like passengers?
There was Randy had mentioned in his interview that there was a captain who got struck in the head and the chest by a chain.
Like, ugh.
And had tragically passed away. So many people think that they see that captain on board.
Do you know what vessel that is on board?
I want to say the SS Naramata.
Okay.
There have been other people who have experienced things on the SS Sicamous that we will dive into right now.
Okay, I'm excited. Let's get spooky.
We're gonna get spooky. So in my packet it says Haunted Encounters.
Ooh.
Some of these I've basically read a bunch of articles and now I've just kind of rewritten them and paraphrased them so that we can get as much of the info into our podcast without having to read the whole articles.
Sounds great.
Okay. So number 1 is Ed or Eddie Aldridge. So Brian Wilson, who is the chief archivist for the Okanagan Archive Trust Society, suspects that the ship is haunted by Ed Aldridge, who was a former Penticton Herald writer and photographer. So Wilson recalled unusual events after Aldridge's death. Carefully organized photographs would mysteriously end up scattered on the floors. Later, when Aldridge's desk chair and personal belongings were moved aboard the Sicamous, staff began reporting eerie nighttime activities, like footsteps, slamming doors, and faint voices.
Wait, so sorry. This Ed Aldridge's possessions were put on board.
Yes.
And that's when, like, the photos started getting messed up. And that's so, like, specific to, like, a photographer to have
photos.
The photos become unorganized.
Yeah.
And, like, to have it line up with when his things came on board. That's so interesting. Like, things carry your energy.
Yeah, exactly. One employee even claimed that she overheard quiet conversations. Rumors spread that Aldridge's ghost was conversing with Captain Joseph B. Weeks, the ship's long-ago captain, as the two wandered the vessel.
Oh my goodness. That's so, like, I wonder if they could hear the conversation, like why they thought he was conversing with the captain.
Yeah, I know. Some of this stuff was like really hard to find just evidence of ghosts or hauntings on the boat, so I try my best to find everything, but some things are like missing. Wilson believed that Aldridge's spirit attached itself to the ship after his home was demolished.
Oh.
Yeah, so his home got demolished, but spooky things started happening when his stuff was moved in. But now, since his home has been demolished, Wilson believes that his spirit is just like attached to the ship now.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Like if the spirit has no place to truly call home,
Yeah.
but then he could find his possessions on this boat.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me that a spirit could linger there.
Yeah. And I'm sure Eddie has in time photographed the S.S Sicamous and knows it because he was part of the Herald. So
Yeah, almost certainly.
yeah, super interesting.
That's, wow, what an interesting story.
So that is our first potential ghost. Our second potential ghost is none other than Captain Joseph B. Weeks.
Of Eddie Aldridge conversational fame.
The one and the same. So, accounts curated during tours and local interviews mention an older seagoing presence on board, believed by some to be Captain Joseph B. Weeks. He was a historical captain associated with the lake's sternwheelers. Witnesses report feelings of being watched and the occasional unexplained noises in areas once associated with ship officers. His main place to wander is the wheelhouse. Now, I went into the wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
I was escorted up there by Katie. Shout out, Katie. I had something happen.
Really?
I did.
What happened?
I have the iPhone 16.
Okay.
On the iPhone 16, you have a side button to act as a shutter.
Like
For
your
your
camera.
camera.
Okay.
So I asked her, Katie, could I take some photos up here? She said, yeah, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring out my phone and I press the button to open the camera app. And it was just black. Like a black screen. Like, there's nothing. So I turn I close the app. I open the app again. Blank. Nothing. So I begin to just press the shutter. And it was there. It was taking photos. So I have photos of the wheelhouse in my phone, but I could not see my screen.
Weird.
Yeah, so it's almost like something didn't want me to see in the wheelhouse.
Oh, that's for officers only.
It's for officers only,
You weren't supposed to be there.
let alone a woman be in the wheelhouse back in those days. So I think maybe he was like, what are you doing up here? Young lady, you are not allowed to be up here. This is for captains.
What an interesting
So,
theory.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So that is a very weird thing, and my screen just totally glitched and it was blacked out. But it was still taking photos. So very, very strange and very, very interesting.
Technical glitch or ghost?
We'll never know. True discovery. A man found floating in the Okanagan Lake. Local oral history and reports tied to Penticton's haunted past reference a man found floating in the lake by an S.S Sicamous crew. That incident and the broader unsettled history around pauper burials in the area is frequently cited as a possible source of restless spirits connected to sites, including the S.S Sicamous. To be discovered by someone on the S.S Sicamous could have then tied another ghost on board. There's some general unexplained phenomena. Visitors, volunteers, and investigators have reported typical haunted site phenomena on board. So like we have talked about, like footsteps, voices, noises, lights or items moving on their own, doors opening and closing without an obvious cause. And these reports are repeated in local press and community testimony collected over the years. So
these aren't just one-off type experiences.
Yeah.
So many different people are
They're-
seeing and hearing weird things on the boat.
exactly. So it's not like one time Jimmy heard a door slam. It's like, visitors even are starting to hear some of this stuff. The Sicamous has hosted organized paranormal investigations and public ghost hunt events, which is like pretty strange and cool. I feel
Yeah.
like not a lot of places do that.
I had no idea something like
Yeah.
that was going on there.
There's actually one that happened like 2 years ago. And these investigations have produced claims of EMF spikes, EVP captures, and other evidence typical of paranormal team reports. So
just to pause, EMF.
So EMF is basically like a little device that reads
Electromagnetic field.
electromagnetic fields, and it's like a little reader, and it's got lights from green to red, and the more field there is, electromagnetic field there is, the higher the number goes.
Which would mean the possible presence of
a
some
ghost.
entity that you're not seeing.
Yeah, a spiritual.
Right. And then EVP.
EVP is an electronic voice phenomenon, and it's usually done with like just a regular sound recorder, like those little Sony ones that you get. And it's said to be less energy for a ghost or spirit to spend to talk into one of those than it is to produce an actual audible thing for our ears.
Interesting. Cool.
So it'll use, usually people will ask questions, leave a big space that would be silent. So if we were to pause right now, and then now when we listen back, if there's something there, that's an EVP.
Cool.
And usually it's like voices. It's like you would ask a question, and if it answered, it would be evidence of a ghost.
So various paranormal investigation groups have gone to the S.S Sicamous and gotten these types of evidence.
Yes.
Cool.
The
So something's going on.
Something's going on. The unfortunate part is I couldn't find any of it. I think people just aren't sharing it publicly.
Okay.
But pretty cool.
If anyone's out there with some of this evidence, I'd like to see it.
I like to see it. Finally, I did kind of go on to like some Facebook groups and stuff for Penticton and the S.S Sicamous. And local Facebook groups, comment threads, and community articles collected many smaller informal reports. So just like visitors feeling cold spots, like photographing unexplained mists or orbs, and then staffs recounting odd nights while closing up. These are more dispersed than single verifiable incidents.
Okay.
So it's more just like I heard from a friend, or it's not quite as like I went there, this is my evidence. It's more of I went there and I felt this.
Right.
Yeah.
Like word of mouth.
Word of mouth accounts. Yeah. But they do form a big part of the ship's haunted reputation. That's how things get reputations, is word of mouth. And I will say I didn't really feel any, like, I didn't feel like I was being watched or anything. The only really weird thing that happened to me was in the stern, or in the wheelhouse of just my camera not working. It was super strange, because usually when you reboot an app, like, it fixes the problem, and I did it multiple times, and it was still glitched out. So
That is strange.
super strange.
To go back to what you were saying before about the word of mouth accounts.
Yeah.
I think going to those like Facebook groups and like different comment threads online, like going to the people, like that's where you're going to get a lot of the stories and the inspiration for paranormal investigation groups to go out and do their investigations and create more producible evidence.
Yeah.
So I think I would be really interested to see if more ghost hunting groups go to the S.S Sicamous and maybe post something online for me to watch. I don't know. Because it sounds like there is more to explore there. I'd like to see more. And
there's definitely something happening there, because if multiple people are experiencing the exact same thing, footsteps, faint voices, there has to be a reason for that. There has to be something that is going on.
The really intriguing thing is that there aren't any known associated deaths that happened on the S.S Sicamous.
Exactly, yeah.
So the fact that there are so many odd occurrences that can't be explained, it's just such a wonder.
It is a wonder
how the paranormal works.
Yeah, and I feel like that's part of why we're doing this, is to kind of explore that a bit deeper. So thank you for joining me on our voyage.
Wait, what
do boats
did
have
we decide?
Toots?
There's a foghorn.
Wow.
I don't know. Well, I mean, thank you for sharing. It was so cool to hear about that little slice of Okanagan life from back in the day.
Yeah, super interesting. Thank you as well for coming on the voyage with us and learning a little bit more about the S.S Sicamous and how it shaped the Okanagan and travel in the Okanagan, and also how it shaped haunted encounters in the Okanagan. So definitely go to the S.S Sicamous Museum in Penticton to check it out for yourselves, and maybe take a couple of photos in the wheelhouse.
Thank you for watching this episode of Okanagan Legends and Hauntings. Make sure to tune in next time for another spooky story set right here in the Okanagan. Bye.